Hey everybody, this is Pete Ritchie from Solstice Media, and I'm here with my friend Jeff Jones, and he is your representative candidate for the 163rd Legislative District in Pennsylvania. Jeff, it's great to see you.
Good to see you, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So Jeff and I, a little backstory, Jeff and I met when I was asked to join Upper Darby's Economic Development Committee, and Jeff was already on that committee. It was a very good, very productive bipartisan committee. The previous Upper Darby administration wasn't happy about it being bipartisan and just ended it. And some really good things were happening, wouldn't you agree? And we were making some great steps, and everybody on that program was working well together, and it just ended, and it has not been brought back by Mayor Brown's administration either. So it's one of the things that I would love to see come back, because I don't think that there's a great business climate. I don't think there's a lot of motivation for people to open up businesses, and I don't think people know what programs might be available that could help them. I mean, the businesses that do open in Upper Darby are very diverse, very interesting. There's a food culture here. My wife and I try everything, and we haven't even scratched the surface of how many options there are here. And people don't really know about the businesses. There's a couple of independent forums online where you can learn about a couple of businesses, but they're not really promoted, and there's no support from local government for the business community. So, I'm curious about, what do you think you would do? Would you like to see that committee come back in some way, shape, or form? And what would you do to help businesses thrive and exist and open in Upper Darby?
So I do think we need that committee back in the best case scenario, right? The whole purpose of it was to promote local business, to help support and be the liaison to the mayor to local business or through local business. So ideally, yes, that should be priority one. If not that committee, an association of businesses that, you and I both being marketing guys, we know there's more strength in the volume when there's a lot of different businesses collaborating with one another, right? We know, for example, in Upper Darby, where a lot of those restaurants are popping up, parking is a tremendous concern. Commercial parking. A friend of mine has an appliance business on Garrett Road, and he's got nowhere to put his trucks. He's got nowhere for his guys to swing in and grab a part that came in through FedEx. And it's difficult for a business to operate. We've seen offices open up along Garrett Road, for example, and as that business grows, they have clients that come in. The clients have nowhere to park. So we know that parking is a chief concern. We also know that the commercial corridors that we were talking about in that Economic Development Committee, 69th Street, one of the topics of discussion had to do with loss prevention and what those businesses were experiencing with theft and property crimes. And the township prior, or the administration prior to, had instituted a collaboration with law enforcement where there were foot patrols. I don't even think those foot patrols exist anymore, because I don't believe half those businesses at 69th Street exist anymore. So an association of businesses might promote and support each other to grow their respective businesses. One of the things that was used as an excuse, if you will, to dismantle that Economic Development Committee was the onset of COVID.
Right.
And, that was the time you needed an economic committee, because all of the programs that came out with PPE monies and things like that, a program and a committee like that could have supported our local business partners who may not have the best accounting systems and may not be best prepared to experience something that was unfathomable at that moment in time. That was a support mechanism that could have helped some businesses survive and come out on the other side of something we didn't even totally understand when it started. So I think it was short-sighted. I think that reuniting business, Pennsylvania was found to be the 41st most unfriendly state to do business in. So we're in the bottom 10% of places people want to go and do business as a state. And I think Delaware County being, one of the larger counties in the Commonwealth, and Upper Darby being probably the fifth largest township in the Commonwealth, bigger than some other counties across the 67 counties in the Commonwealth, Upper Darby could become and be that epicenter for diversity of business, diversity of business owners. But what it's going to take is some legislative friendliness in creating programs to help start up businesses be effective and sustainable, to help local business be sustainable, to support law enforcement efforts to make those nights out feel safer for people to go to those restaurants and go and park in a lot and walk down a street or whatever the case may be. And then we need to find solutions, if at all possible, to some of our parking issues in the town. We have great pockets of commercial corridors that have great reasons to go out. My wife and I are always looking for that close to home escape for date night.
Right.
But we want a variety, right? Variety is the spice of life.
Yeah.
Trying new foods and new experiences are awesome. But having an organization that supports one another, that's being shared, I think helps grow the respective businesses.
I agree. And physically, there's only so much land and it's used up, so the parking is always going to be a challenge. But maybe the township didn't have to raise the rate so much on where there is parking and the meters and everything like that. And God knows there were problems with the parking authority recently, but we don't have to touch on that. So the next thing with all of that, because there isn't a whole lot of business tax coming in, I feel like the residents, and I'm a resident, pay a lot, a disproportionate amount in school taxes and real estate taxes, and now an increased exit tax when you move out of Upper Darby, one less, before you leave, and tax, and a lot of it is probably due to reckless spending, and we gotta try to make these expenses up somewhere, and unfortunately, it's always happening in the form of tax increases. What do you think we can do as far as generating additional revenue that's not tax revenue into here and help, decrease this tax burden that we're experiencing?
Wow. That's a great question and a complex problem. So when we look at Upper Darby Township, we pay some of the highest millage rates against our property values, which could be greater, be it not for the highest millage rates in Delaware County that we pay. And that's across the board, right? That's our local tax, that's our county tax, that's our school tax. And uncontrolled spending from our administrative leaders, right, whether it be our municipal leaders in the township, in the county, we've talked about many times that their spending was unsustainable, and they were given kind of blank checks when COVID happened, and some of that money is still under dispute in Upper Darby Township.
The arts and education money?
Yes, those types of things.
Yeah.
But it was not, used the way council wanted it. There's a lot of agenda-based politic that I won't get into, but from a legislative standpoint, I think we could all look at our neighborhoods, especially in parts of Upper Darby Township where there's abandoned houses, there's dilapidated, boarded up houses that aren't generating any tax revenue at all. And the revenue generating ability of any municipal government is in its ability to charge taxes and raise fees. So we don't want to raise fees, right? Inflation's already high enough. We're paying $4.50 a dozen for eggs. We're paying $3+ a gallon for gas, depending on the day of the week. So we don't want to add fees because that's just another form of tax. Yet we see this approach to that problem by implementing earned income taxes, where now in Upper Darby, they're going to start taking in 2025 1% of our earned revenue per person per household. So if you live in Upper Darby or work in Upper Darby, you're now going to get hit with a 1% earned income tax. We're seeing that same program in Alden Borough, which is another part. It's being proposed in Alden for 2025. That's another part of the district. So we need to maybe step back and organize on two fronts. And this is where, again, I think the economic development piece comes in. We build business to build and strengthen our commercial base. It creates jobs. And if we do it in a way that the businesses themselves are sustainable, so I'm not picking on any one business, but, as opposed to a vape shop, maybe some other kind of business comes in. Then we try to build our trades groups to help with the dilapidated housing and get that housing back to a livable condition that can be sold, that can be tax revenue again being generated into the community, and hopefully this helps stave off some of the revenue issues that we see. But the other piece, the more important piece, is the self-check piece of managing the municipal checkbook.
Right.
Controlling how we spend. I love parks. I love the outdoors. I think they're important, but I also think collecting parking tickets is important. We saw that as a problem in Upper Darby Township. Our services are important. Making sure that people are paying the appropriate fees in time, as expected, and collecting that lost revenue, I think is important as well. And then controlled spending from the top, which would be the legislative end of things, the state government, and just trying to manage programs in such a way that we're doing it in a common sense manner, that we're really thinking about how this is going to impact the regular people in our community.
Right.
So, I look globally to serve district level, right? How do our actions at the top start to trickle down and impact the lives of the people who are our next door neighbors? And that's important. We need to just step back and again go with a common sense approach.
Yeah.
Of how to figure those things out.
Maybe go after some of these absentee landlords that aren't paying their share, and maybe seize some properties that are in arrears and things like that, and also make it so that you can put your municipal services fees, like sewer and trash, into your mortgage, like a lot of places do, but they don't let you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people slip, and then they make money on the fees for it being late, and it's a revenue grab. And
and the way that system is set up. Right, you get your bill, and if you pay it before the end of May, you pay the base amount, and then there's a penalty, and then there's another penalty if you forget it. I'll admit, I forgot about it.
I've done it.
I missed the May deadline, and I got the bill, and now I'm writing a check, and I'm paying 10% on top, and shame on me, but I'm still paying it.
Do it.
Yeah, but if that and
$100,000,
But what's interesting to me is I didn't get any notification until it was in the penalty.
Right.
So October or so. So while I appreciate notice, maybe there is a better way of doing it so that it's instead of dropping a 74-cent stamp on a letter and sending it out to me, there's an email or a text message or something like that. I think we've become a society where our phones and our emails are more widely read than our mail.
Absolutely.
So, maybe that's the pivot to, again, common sense. How do we save money on the municipal level on our outlay of cost, but we still get the revenue that we need? And sometimes people just need to be reminded.
Yeah. I mean, in all things here, you don't have to still get the physical calendars and stuff like that. That could all be digital and access it and, interact with your Google Calendar, your iCalendar, whatever you use, and save the money on the printing and the mailing and distributing and those type of things. Could save. So I'm going to talk about job creation and training. What resources are available for companies to, hire new employees that are in Upper Darby, and what training programs might be able to put people out there that don't have a college degree, but can be trained specifically for tasks that need to be handled.
So there are plenty of programs in existence, but it is the classic, in my opinion, you need to know somebody who understands what the program is or what the trade school is or what have you. So I think kind of centralizing that in a way that there's an umbrella organization, maybe another business association, that can help young men and women who maybe aren't college bound but are trades bound to meet up with those business owners that are looking to apprentice someone or just guide someone to the what their next steps are. Knowledge is power. And if we can share knowledge with our next generation, I have 5 kids, so I understand the complaint that kids would rather play their video games, right, than do hard work. But I think there are kids out there. I met a young man last night who plays the cello and works like 3 or 4 jobs to provide for himself. And you want to encourage him. I want to come alongside him and help that young man because he's doing what he needs to do what he loves to do. And I think if we start giving kids an opportunity, or just even young adults who are looking for a path to something, and that takes us back to that business association. I think the more I think about it, economic development committees are nice. Business associations might be better because there's your umbrella that's kind of leading kids into meet Bob the
Builder.
general. Meet Bob the builder. Meet Dante the plumber. And come alongside those and give these kids and young people an opportunity to really explore and see what they have. Even in school, I think. When I went to school, and that was many moons ago, there were, you did home ec, you did shop, you did auto repair, you dabbled in these things, and it was an exposure to it to see if you had an aptitude or an interest towards it. And some of the guys I know that I grew up with went that direction, and now they're successful at what they're doing. And making a good living doing it.
Yeah, and not burdened with college debt.
Exactly. But it started with, am I interested? Was there an opportunity in this? And how do I do it? Yeah. And the best way to learn the answers to those questions is to come alongside someone who's already doing it. Because you see what they do well. You see what they don't well.
There are a lot of programs out there, but how do we communicate these programs? And Upper Darby does have some, business associations in different neighborhoods, and it would be good if they could collaborate and talk. And I know the Chamber of Commerce is working with some of these groups here locally through churches and through different affiliations. Maybe get them all together and work with them and just really communicate the opportunities. And that nobody in the current administration or the previous administration seems to be doing, and or have done. And, we would love to see that back for the future of our kids here.
Right, right. The 163rd District is one of the most diverse districts in just its general population. So I am a believer that we can solve more problems when we work together and communicate with one another. So it is that bringing people to the table of
Right.
different ethnicities and different value sets, and really dialoguing, especially in a climate when it seems like everything's screaming and yelling and
It's out of
aggressive. It's completely out of
It's
control.
like I want this election to be over just so I can just watch a football game again and see a commercial about tires instead of politicians, and all that goes back to this community collaboration that you were talking about. The different groups and the different organizations that might be able to support each other and have some overlap with their initiatives. It's so important. Like, how do you think we can bring together these various groups of do-gooders, that are really focused on helping the people of our community? How can we help them, lift each other up and support each other?
So I'll share an experience I just recently had. A friend of mine realized that there is a problem with stray cats in Delaware County. Now, I knew because another friend of mine was involved with a program that traps stray cats and takes them to spay and neuter them. And there's cost involved in all this. And it turns out there's a bunch of different groups that do the trapping and the spay and the neutering, but there's no real resource for housing these stray cats. So you can foster them temporarily while they heal from the surgery and what have you, and that's what all these good people do. And then they end up releasing them back into the homeless cat world.
Right.
And I found it interesting that so my friends want to do a kind of an umbrella organization that brings them all together, that becomes a resource for the community when they see stray cats, when they're dealing with stray cats. It becomes an advocacy program for municipal legislation in dealing with, protecting people who feed these stray cats and those kinds of things. So there's a whole lot of layers to it. But what I found interesting, while I was aware, it wasn't until just last night I was driving home from an event and I must have saw a half dozen cats running around. And it reminded me that you don't realize there's a problem until you acknowledge that there's a problem.
Right.
So by creating this safe space, if you will, where communities can really start to connect with one another again and share the good and the bad. When we talk about absentee landlords, for example, there's parts of all of our communities where the housing or the trash is accumulating and the landlord's not really taking responsibility and he's blaming the tenant and so on. If we just got together and cleaned that up, what a better place it would be.
Absolutely.
So imagine what we could do if we got more engaged in our recreational programs, or we created spaces to community days again. Mm-hmm. I know some communities do it. It's generally revolves around something specific.
Yeah.
The soccer league, right?
Yes.
The basketball program or something like that. And these are great things. But if we can elevate it to get all of our neighbors involved,
Yep.
that, I think, starts the dialogue to hold folks like myself who want to be the legislator that is the force multiple in making good in the community more available to the general population. Because as we complain about the volume in campaign season, part of the reason the volume is what it is because no one pays attention any other time.
Right.
So if we create an environment where I don't need anything from my legislator, but I saw him or her at this community day and I connected with them And then the problem arises that you need them, you know where they are.
Right.
And you know you already have relationship. Being that marketing guy, I know relationship is elementally important to solving the problems that we identify. So that's what the force multiple does. The force multiplier becomes that catalyst to make movement stronger, to make change better and more impactful for everybody.
Yeah, and I think we are lacking respectful dialogue.
Yes.
And people are just, Jeff doesn't know Donald Trump. He never will. I mean,
I never met the man.
To just lump things in for certain things here at your local level is where things can be the most impactful. And I feel like in the last 5 years here, our community, not just here, nationally, globally, but there's just such hate. It's just like, I hate you because you're this. You shouldn't hate a person that you've been friends with for years because they're Republican or they're a Democrat. It's stupid. And once that person, even though they're not who you voted for, gets into office, to want them to fail is also stupid. You don't want somebody to fail because they're not your party. You want them to be successful and say, okay, we worked through this. All our lives are a little bit better.
Right.
So I think we all need to take a collective breath. Just try to listen. Just listen to the other people's point of view. And then, once you're installed, so then, I know, because I know you so well, I know that you will bring that type of communication, no matter where you are, to the floor. And if it's a good idea, even if it's not your idea, so you'll support it. And that's what's best for everybody. Jeff is very good at listening to his potential constituents and the people in, this isn't your first run for an office. And, he knows the party, he knows the experience, he knows what it takes to do this. And if you really care about Upper Darby and the 163rd Legislative District, get up and vote for Jeff on November 5th. Believe me, we will be better off because you did. So, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it, man. I wish you the best of luck. And,
Thank you.
Let's go get them. Thank you.
Thank you.